Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Pacific War podcast. I'm joined here by, the two reoccurring faces on an audio podcast. You've probably never actually seen them, but it's Justin and Ian that are surrounding me.
Hi there.
And, for Patreon members, I'll probably actually put a video of this out because I've made like an AI bar. So we all look like we're sitting at what would be a war-torn World War II kind of Japanese bar.
Isn't this a real bar?
Because any other YouTuber would just pretend it's an actual bar there. He has to go and call himself out like an idiot.
Of course I'm going to do that.
Yeah, this is definitely a real bar,
I'm actually
folks.
8'10" in real life, so this is a realistic bar.
Yeah.
But the subject matter of this episode, for people coming over from Kings and Generals, they're probably going to be like, oh, great, it's Craig shit-talking Douglas MacArthur again. So I'm kind of notorious at this point, and I thought it would be kind of just fun to grab my friends and explain to them the lesser qualities of, Julius Caesar Douglas MacArthur himself. And to kind of narrow it down, because I don't want to talk about his entire career or anything, but I'll just talk about a little bit like who he was and his unbelievable blunder in the initial Philippines campaign. That's what it'll be limited to.
Now, for those of you who are history buffs like me, you'll probably know that Douglas MacArthur was an old Spanish warship. I think she had a voyage in the 1800s.
In the Civil War.
And she was eventually sank by the Kraken. And
his last name translates to a whale's vagina.
Yes,
of course.
That's exactly it.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to let you know I now have a Patreon account found at www.patreon.com/thepacificwarchannel. Over there you can find exclusive Patreon episodes and podcasts based on suggestions from patrons, and other benefits like early access to all of my content, live hangouts, your name in the end credits, and much, much more. So please go check it out.
No, to be honest, Douglas MacArthur is one of those historical figures that I've heard the name a gabillion times and I know nothing about. So feel free to shit talk all you want.
You can't say Douglas MacArthur.
Yeah.
You can't say Douglas MacArthur without me fumbling my words. No, immediately I always just go to like Tommy Lee Jones.
I mean, it's not a bad
like
movie.
For the look.
Yeah. I mean, Tommy Lee Jones is just an endearing actor, and he's good in everything he does. And you know what? That movie made him look too good, though.
Just for reference, the movie is Emperor. I think it came out 10 years or so.
It's old now, yeah.
It's not too bad, but it
covers him in Japan after the war. So him the transition period where he literally was the shogun of Japan, going around in a kimono. That's very true. He wore a kimono in private all the time.
Did you guys know that Tommy Lee Jones is gay?
Did I?
No? No Tom Segura fans out there? Okay, sorry. Shitty reference.
I heard that podcast, so I know that joke. So, right. I mean, obviously Justin's representing the general audience. You've never heard of this guy before, who cares? The only reason people have heard of his name today is because I think it was in 2016, Trump said it was his favorite general, which is ironic as hell because they share a lot of narcissistic traits.
I just made this comment 5 minutes ago, Douglas MacArthur was the Trump of his time.
He was. And, it worked for him, too.
A MacArthur Grant and a few other things that his name gets thrown around. But,
oh, my God, yeah. But, here, I'll pitch the question to Ian. Ian, what do you know about Douglas MacArthur?
Well, he was very pompous. Another general of the time who you could compare him to is, George Patton,
yes,
inflated ego, megalomaniac. These are the kinds of generals who they see more of them in themselves than others do necessarily, but they use that inflated ego to push themselves higher and higher and more critical to the war campaign, and not necessarily equating to proper leadership or actually deserving the role. If you had to take MacArthur, break him down, what makes him a good general? Nothing stands out about his strategies and tactics. Oh. He's not a genius of his time, but in his mind, he was. And he was the most essential key to American victory.
I mean, I wouldn't call him an idiot. MacArthur was very well educated. He was a smart guy, for sure.
Absolutely. The way he navigated politics within, the American circle, getting the funds that he required, getting the material that he required. Like, he was great at.
He was successful at that. Yeah,
getting what he wanted, like taking from the Navy what he wanted.
His number one enemy, not the Japanese, but the United States Navy.
I will be honest. Like, I am. How would you say it? Like, I'm not a fan. I definitely would side with his adversaries within the Navy. Like, I definitely have more respect for men like Admiral King or Admiral Nimitz, and these guys were always butting heads with MacArthur.
You know, his best friend was Halsey, though. Halsey was in the same area as him, so they both had to fight for the same resources.
He was like, Halsey was the Navy attaché to MacArthur for a bit.
They basically the area of the world that they were working in, they were both there. He was representing the Navy and MacArthur the land forces, so they had to fight for resources together no matter what.
Yeah, they got on stellar. Their families as well. Halsey's wife and MacArthur's wife, they became besties.
Halsey there's a lot of primary quotes. He liked MacArthur. He said he was a soldier. MacArthur rarely said nice things about other people, but he said nice things about Halsey.
And Halsey was, to a fault, a honest man.
Yeah.
He wouldn't lie. He wouldn't say things just to gain favor with someone. He said it as it is. And
and Halsey is a big reason why MacArthur was able to get things, because.
But apparently, a lot of his, a lot of that stems down to personal interactions with MacArthur behind closed doors.
Oh, but that's how MacArthur worked.
Yeah. Apparently, in person, he was a very nice guy. He was a great friend.
Oh, I'm sure he could talk anybody into any party he would go to. I'm sure he's the life of the party. He's known as America's Caesar. So you have to picture a guy who literally thinks he's Julius Caesar, and this guy also happened to speak about himself in the third person.
He was a genius when it came to navigating.
Big time.
When he was navigating public opinion, he had such a knack to it.
But is that the center of attention in a good way, or the center of attention where everybody's making fun of him because he speaks of himself in the third person?
There's a ballads lamenting him. And there was a nickname that I'll get into because it's going to be in the Philippines, but there was a song literally made from the American national anthem just to make fun of him. And
really,
but I'll have to explain it later on. Kind of in a lot of ways like Trump, where Trump could go on stage and he could lie about 100 different things, but you're still going to be on board with what he's doing. You'll give him the benefit of the doubt stuff. There's a lot of that kind of energy. It's hard to say in this day and age, but he would be a Trump-like figure, for better or worse. But I'll say a little bit about his upbringing. I can't go into great detail. I'm not doing a biography on him. Kings and Generals had me do that already, and it's been a lot of fun. But there's too much information because he has a very colorful career, and he was a war hero from World War I. He has a very, very long career, and his family is pretty important.
He was a military man. For
sure.
Yeah.
So Douglas MacArthur, he was born in January 26th of 1880 at Little Rock Barracks in Little Rock, Arkansas. Arkansas. I don't know why I said Arkansas there. Anyways.
Too sassy.
This is the one with the higher degree of education.
Oh, it doesn't mean anything. Nah. Doesn't mean anything.
Arkansas.
Yeah. Oh man, there's some people online that are gonna get me so bad because I mispronounce some ships that are United States. Anyways, I'm gonna eat some shit for that one. He was the youngest of the litter, and he comes from Arthur MacArthur, who was a Civil War general, a very famous one too.
Who in the fuck names their child Arthur MacArthur?
Oh, there's more Arthurs in this. There's the Douglas MacArthur Jr., Douglas MacArthur II, and Arthur MacArthur. There's a lot.
Yeah, but Douglas Arthur is fine. Arthur MacArthur's?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, what about John Johnson?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But,
John Johnson Jr.
Let's just say he had a legacy to live upon. Just like Julius Caesar in a lot of ways. The same kind of upbringing, to be honest. So, this is an army family. You gotta picture this. He, as a kid, he's moving barracks to barracks. He's already enthralled in that, military sense.
Okay.
And, here's a quote from him that I had in one of these old scripts I wrote for K&G. I learned to ride and shoot even before I could write. Indeed, almost before I could walk and talk, which is so MacArthur. So, he's a military brat son of, like I said, Arthur MacArthur Jr. Because, of course, there was an Arthur MacArthur Sr. And he had an impressive military career. He fought in the Union Army during the American Civil War. And he also became the Governor General of the Philippines. So that's MacArthur's father, just for coherency's sake. And basically those traits are going to set the stage for MacArthur. He has an extensive career. He deals with the Philippine-American War, the Mexican Revolution. He fights at World War I, where he becomes a bit of a war hero. He meets Patton, by the way, I believe, in World War I. I think that's their only time they met.
Yeah.
And then he'll famously be a general in World War II. And then infamously in the Korean War, where things took a very sour note for him. For Justin to understand why we would say that, when pressed by the current president as to how to win the war, he basically just asked for 15 nuclear weapons.
Who's the current president at the time? Dwight D. Eisenhower. And Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander.
It's Truman.
During the Korean War? It was
No, but when he asked for the nukes.
Oh, okay.
49. Yeah. So it was Truman when he was asking for the nukes.
But, he notoriously never got along with
Eisenhower.
with
Of
Eisenhower.
course.
Eisenhower being, from the European campaign,
they never meshed.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Eisenhower had a lot of colorful quotes about MacArthur. There's a lot of good ones. And so during MacArthur's upbringing, the term, have you ever heard of a helicopter mom?
Yes, I have.
So you kind of have an idea in your head what that means?
Yeah.
So MacArthur's mom, basically, she followed him everywhere he went, and she just beat down on doors to make sure that he got everything he needed. So, she would use the...
I'm sorry.
Oh.
Hello, Mr. President. My son needs...
I was going to make a bad joke.
But it could be true, maybe. I don't know.
Stepson, I got stuck in the helicopter again. I'm
sorry. I was going to make a different dirty joke, but you know what? Go for it.
I was going to say, maybe she slept with officials to get in positions. But she did something. She used the dad's name and, the family legacy, and she just hounded everybody for his education, for his military posts, that he needed to get top rank, he needed to be the best of the best, blah, blah, blah. She opened all the doors. So he was pushed by this strong mom figure.
So he was basically Forrest Gump.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I guess. That's a weird comparison, but yeah, sure. Yeah.
I mean, hey, your mama sure does care about your schooling, son.
So you got to imagine this guy from a very young age. He's going literally from glory to glory. That sounded oddly sexual. And so he starts as a superintendent at West Point. That's a prestigious military.
West Point,
and then he eventually becomes Major General in the Philippines. And everywhere he goes, he brings his mom. And it is creepy.
Something ain't right there.
His mom is everywhere, every lodging, everything.
Is his dad dead at this point, or?
Yeah, his dad... Oh, fuck. His dad died in... Because his dad became the Governor General of the Philippines. At some point... Before the 30s, his dad must have died.
Okay, because I'm saying, if he's dragging his mom around and his dad's still alive, that's
it kind of does make sense, because he comes from a big military family, and in this sense, so does his mom. She's used to that status and that environment.
No, that I get, but if his dad's still around and he's staying home while mom goes with the son, that's a little weird.
Well, she's probably not going to the fucking meetings with him and. Sitting in, honey,
she might be.
Honey, listen to the nice man.
So he eventually finds his way over to the Philippines. I mean, his dad was Governor General, so he's already got an in with the president at the time, Emmanuel Quezon, and basically he's given a free hand in anything in the Philippines. The president loves him. He's got a future ahead of him. But, in 1937, he's retiring from the United States Army. He's pretty old by this point.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's almost 60.
God.
57.
They take his ass out of retirement for World War II, and I guess he's 60-something. He's pretty old.
Again, 1940, he's 60.
Yeah. So you got to imagine, it's 1937. The war is kicking off, for China and Japan at least. But in the meantime, as a retired guy... He's in a civilian capacity building the Philippine Army for the Philippine people, for the Filipinos. Because this is complicated. There is a United States Army presence within the Philippines, but instead of dealing with that, although he's building this independent army. Now,
but it's almost acting as not a colony, but
it's a protectorate.
A proxy.
Yeah.
Like a Puerto Rico type of thing.
Well, that was a territory Puerto Rico.
Rico's an official territory where the Philippines, like, they just didn't want to call it a colony because it went against their constitution, basically.
But it's like a proxy.
It's a proxy colony, yeah. I mean, it was. America was an empire. They just don't want to admit it. Now,
well, they took Philippines from the Spanish, and they were supposed to move on after that, but they stayed.
They certainly did. Now, between when he was young till then, there was a lot of things that happened in his life. Like, he has a interesting career, and a lot of people would diagnose him with, being a narcissist. But I mean, like, clinically. Like, we're not just saying, like, how we all would say, again, I keep making Trump, like the guy we're talking about. Trump is a narcissist. But I mean, clinically, like, he literally was. Like, a psychologist, if he could actually go into a room, would have grabbed him and said that.
Tony Stark.
Yeah, sure. But he was incapable of ever accepting responsibility for any mistakes he ever did. And I mean to a ridiculous degree. Like, it's kind of, like, comedic.
It was always somebody else's fault. Yeah, he was let down by everyone else.
And he's completely and utterly obsessed with his public image. He will literally have what you would call, as someone who's a high-ranking official in the military, you have officers, you have a chief of staff, and all these officers that are responsible for logistics, for this. He had, like, an entourage that was just there for public relations. And there's basically no one else in the United States military.
In the 1930s and 40s,
It's going to start in the 40s, but it's going to go on for the rest.
Allies visiting, like...
So military man / movie star /
Exactly, that's a great way to look at it.
They notoriously said meetings with MacArthur were a nightmare because not only, like, everything is time sensitive, like,
of course,
going on in the war.
In general,
But he would postpone things. He's like, no, we got to finish this picture. And, like, taking pictures with him, like, were sometimes 2-3 hour long affairs just to get one picture because it had to be absolutely perfect.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
And, like, meanwhile, like, you have, like, Dutch admirals or English admirals there. It's like, hey, we're here to talk about say that right? It's Anbu.
What?
Australia, New Zealand,
Anzac?
Britain, and Anbu. Because I said Anbu.
Oh, you mean
Anbu.
Abdicom. You mean when they were the unified front at the beginning of the war? Yeah, it's Abdicom. So ABDA. Com.
What's Anbu? You sure it's not Anbu?
I don't know. I've never heard Anbu.
Bring up the Google.
Anyways.
I'll go Anbu being like Australia, New Zealand, Britain,
Dutch,
United States.
United States.
Forgetting about the Dutch. But it was like that little coalition of their available navies in the area at the time. And meeting together is like, to organize defenses and whatnot. And Japan's running wild. And MacArthur, like, would have them waiting 2-3 hours at a time. Like, hey, I got to take this photo first. Sorry, guys.
And very critical.
And it's not just, like, take a photo and move on and, get to business. Like, no, it's like holding everything up just to get a photo.
And it's the first 6 months of the war was the most critical. The Japanese were unrelenting. There was an action every single day going on across multiple different places in the South Pacific. It was insane.
And in MacArthur's mind, it's like, oh, no, we need to have the best public image because, like, when people at home see this, like, that's going to raise the morale in that scene, their ultimate.
So we're talking as vain as can possibly be.
Actually, I got a quote here from Mr. Eisenhower himself, when he had become president, about MacArthur. He said about MacArthur, he had an obsession as a high commander that he must protect his image at all costs and must never admit his wrongs, which kind of embodies MacArthur. He was grandiose, self-glorifying. He attributed much of the United States Army's success to just himself all the time in his speeches. And he would emphasize, the many awards he received throughout his careers. And there was a lot of discussions about the Medal of Honor stuff, anyways. But other things that people might want to know about this kind of kooky character, he would often sit at his desk wearing a Japanese kimono, smoking cigarettes out of a jeweled holder, and speaking about himself classically in the third person. And he apparently had a 15-foot high mirror behind his office chair. And I have yet to find a picture of this. I've looked very hard because there's places in the world where you can actually go to rooms where he had used to work. Like, HQs. I think there's a place in Japan where, when he was in the transition period. But there's this story about the mirror. I've never actually seen a giant mirror in any of these rooms. Just saying.
Mirror, mirror on the wall.
Let me see if I can zero in on this a little bit. Tony Stark, Iron Man 2. I have successfully privatized world peace. Thank you. You're welcome. Like,
Pretty
go
much.
fuck yourselves.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
I mean, I actually think he would refer to himself as being the Emperor of Japan after like 45.
The irony of that is people did reflect on that when the movie Emperor came out.
Yeah.
It's like, was it about Emperor Hirohito? Because the whole movie is centered around was the Emperor responsible? Like, should he be held accountable and put to death, basically?
Yeah.
And other people said like it could be loosely based on Emperor MacArthur.
Because I mean the truth of it, and it's awkward for Americans. I mean this is more common knowledge, of course, today with literature and that. But the Constitution that was written for Japan after the war was literally the Americans just writing it themselves.
Yeah,
and it was
that
hidden.
was one of the unfavorable, like, ridiculous ones that we talked about.
The unfavorable treaties, that's 19th century kind of stuff. But yeah, this is one of those in a lot of ways. But the United States hid this fact from the public for, I have no idea, like 50 years or something. So basically, the United States wrote the Constitution of Japan that currently is in use.
To be fair, they did write a pretty good one, though.
Japan has remained one of the closest allies to the United States. They have great trade relations. Anyways,
and just immediately post-war, it became one of the most prosperous nations. Like, post-World War II nations, immediately became one of the most prosperous.
Yeah, well,
you didn't see that kind of level of growth from European nations until like the 60s, 70s.
Yeah, I mean it's apples and oranges, right? Because you're looking at Germany, and the rebuilding of Germany cost a little bit more, I'd say, than even Japan, and it was tricky because at least Japan didn't have a literal. Well, they did have a border with the Soviet Union, but it wasn't the same kind of situation. So MacArthur, he's involved for so long in the military. He's seen different presidents. He's seen different war plans develop. And I don't want to get into the history of this, but basically this is Teddy Roosevelt's days. They used to have these war plans. There were secret plans for if something were to break out, how the United States would act.
Yeah.
And famously, there was like the War Plan Orange, or I think it's called the War Dog Plan once upon a time. What if Japan and the United States found themselves at war? How would this relate to the Philippines? Mm-hmm. So ever since, we're talking 1904, it even goes before 1904, they've kind of had this plan of how they're going to go about defending the Philippines, or how the Philippines is going to be incorporated in the general war plan. MacArthur has been in the military and involved with this entire time, so he's seen the evolution of it, and he's going to fuck this up horrendously, and for his own kind of reasons. So there's a plan. It's called War Plan Orange. And to summarize it, it dictates that the primary mission of the Philippine garrison, so the American units and their Filipino allies in the Philippines, is to just hold on to the entrance of Manila Bay to deny its use to Japan. So I know we don't have the map here, but if you're looking at the Philippines, which is a cluster of a lot of islands, the big island in the middle is a very important harbor. And it's kind of sheltered. I'm making hand gestures now. But it's the crux of the defenses of basically the area. Yeah. And that's in central Luzon.
But I'm guessing this would also be a very important just Navy outpost if they could take it over.
Most important American Navy outpost in the Pacific other than Hawaii. But it's the most forward one, and it's quite large.
Yeah, so protect that at all costs.
So basically, if the Philippines are to be invaded, this War Plan Orange, says that the initial protective force is going to have the main task of preventing enemy landings. But if this does not prove successful, which in most cases you will not be able to stop people from landing, that's just a given, they're going to engage in delaying actions and withdrawing to the Bataan Peninsula. Now, again, to visualize, there's a peninsula that is right beside this bay, Manila Bay.
Okay.
And it's a bottleneck, kind of like Thermopylae. Think of the Battle of Thermopylae.
Yeah.
You get all your guys into this like little shoehorn area, and the enemy can only come from the north against you.
Yep.
And you're very
Unless they know where the goat path is.
There's no actually there is a goat path in this circumstance. It's going over a volcano though, but that does happen. But basically, everybody in the United States military, everyone involved in this knows this war plan. It's going to be around for 40 years. There's little variations and changes to it, But MacArthur has been there every step of the way. He probably knows it by thumb. But he does hate this war plan, I'll mention that. He hates it off the bat.
Oh, he goes and does something else, doesn't he?
He finds it very defeatist. It is defeatist. The whole purpose of the Philippines is basically to hold the Japanese down as long as you can, just to be a nuisance.
Yep.
And
if
possible, the United States, theoretically, depending on the situation, maybe in 6 months to a year, their navy will be strong enough to make a bull rush over to the Philippines to save you.
Best guess.
Best guess, yeah.
Well, to be fair, if you can't hold it indefinitely from the Japanese, then they shouldn't be able to hold it indefinitely from the U.S.
Well, so this is at a time where racism towards the Japanese was running rampant.
Oh yeah,
that wasn't a thing.
Western powers did not believe that the Japanese were capable of much, if not anything. Like look at the British arrogance. The thought of Singapore falling.
Unbelievable.
It was reminiscent of the Titanic. Not even God himself could sink it. Like this is the same kind of arrogance, and Western powers, the United States in particular at this point, never imagined that the Japanese were capable of taking the Philippines.
No,
not to mention like just putting up a good fight at all. Like they used to make remarks, okay, outnumbered 10-1. Like they would still it would be like shooting fish in a barrel. That these Japanese don't know how to fight, where they're no threat to us.
Yep.
So we went from at some point the Japanese being superhuman soldiers with powers.
That's after,
to this.
Yeah, the same people who make these racial remarks against the Japanese come up with this I guess you can call it propaganda. It's fear mongering amongst the American people that the Japanese are superhuman jungle night fighters, which ironically plays into the fact the Japanese trained extensively for night fighting, a little bit in jungle fighting, although there wasn't good places for them to actually train in jungle.
They still lost to the crocodiles. But
no, we're not getting into that.
Now let me use my mystical powers of Miss Cleo future seeing. Let me guess. The U.S. lost the fucking Philippines, didn't
but
they?
the Australians lost to the emus, so...
That's true. So...
But if Australia...
So U.S. actually lost the Philippines, didn't they? Because MacArthur did something stupid.
Well, the thing is, the Philippines was going to be lost. That's like the issue on the table. It could not have been defended.
It was just by time, like you said.
But this is the thing. The war plan calls for all of these men to put up, perhaps they can, a little bit of a defense to stop landings, but it's very obvious that can't happen. Thus, they are supposed to run to this place called Bataan. And when you're a military, in order to fight, you need supplies. So all of the supplies needs to be brought to where you will be fighting, in Bataan. MacArthur does not do this, and this is the crux of the problem.
Oh, no.
So they estimated they would get about 43,000 of their guys into Bataan, and they would have supplies for about 6 months. So think of it kind of like a siege. It's going to be a 6-month siege.
It's a delaying action.
Yeah. Now, just before World War II breaks out for the United States, China's been in it for years. War Plan Orange is superseded by another plan, part of the Rainbow Plan. So this is Rainbow Plan 5. It's complicated, don't need to know too much about it. It just changes things a little bit. This came about because Japan had joined the Pact of Steel with Nazi Germany, so they were kind of changing things around. So basically, it was decided that the United States would put up a defensive stance against Japan, but the focus would be on the Central Powers, so Germany and Italy. So you're going to defeat Germany first. That's the classic way that we say it.
The Europe first.
Yeah, Europe first. And by this point in time, War Plan Orange is in its third variation, but it's still the plan.
But gotta say, in the opening days, it wasn't Europe first. It was only Pacific.
Oh, the opening day for America, only Pacific.
For the first week, like World War II for the United States, they were only at war with Japan, and then Hitler,
just randomly,
big fumble. Okay, declare. Yeah, it was going to happen.
It was going to happen, but he could have played it better.
Yeah, if he stalled it, not declare war on the States would have been entirely invested in the Pacific.
You know what it is? I always question, like, people always ask, why would he do that? I think he was so into the U-boat warfare, because it was doing phenomenally against the British, that he was like, we need to hit the Americans quickly and as fast as possible to U-boats to get their commercial, to commercial really raid them. I guess he figured he would put such a dent into them.
And also backroom deals between Japan and Germany. Like, okay, like the world has just seen half of the American fleet just crippled. Like the majority of the main like surface, like powerful main surface vessels of the Pacific Fleet were just like incapacitated. Not all of them destroyed, but a lot of them out of service for a while.
Well, from the Japanese point of view, they probably thought
Germany's point of view, it's like, okay, so now the Atlantic Navy, they have to send to the Pacific to reinforce their.
Yeah.
This is our time to strike. You know, like let's not give them 6 months to build up and then declare war. Because they're just going to be sending the material to England in the meantime, anyways. Now we have the opportunity, send the U-boats out there, sink the convoys.
Yeah, because I mean, we're all thinking about this in retrospect. We have the privilege of knowing what happens.
Hindsight is 20/20.
Yeah, exactly. Like from their viewpoint, it was completely different.
Yeah, they planned a haymaker, it missed. Oh shit!
But
so a lot of Americans at that time never thought like an attack of Pearl Harbor was possible. Everyone thought it was going to be the Philippines first. Everyone.
Or Panama Canal. A lot of people forget there was a book written in the 1910 or sometime around that. It was called
you could cripple if you
Panama Canal. They thought the Japanese would put like a suicidal effort into bombarding Panama Canal to close it off, to cripple the United States from their navies being able to coordinate anymore. And that would have been pretty terrifying. There was always a worry that some kind of like midget submarine attack would happen in Panama Canal, but it never. There was plans, it never happened.
Fun fact: the original Panama Canal, and then even during World War II, the specifications for the Panama Canal, it was wide enough for American. It was for the battleships.
I guess I'm not sure.
That the specifications were like they had to be wide enough for the American battleships. They didn't even take into account their I guess merchant marine or that. It was all for facilitating the interroute travel. Well, the inner how would you say two coast intercoast.
Intercoastal?
It's
intercoastal travel.
Interocean, I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, I forgot where I was going with that.
Okay.
Anyways, it was just like a fun fact.
Back to the Philippines. So MacArthur, he's seen variations of War Plan Orange, and he's always kind of hated it. He thinks it's too defeatist, it's too defensive, and he's an aggressive general. He has his rationale as to why he wants this, but he wants to at least attempt thwarting an enemy occupation of the Philippines. Remember, he's best friends with the president. The president is paying him money. The president is paying him to train his army. So MacArthur is the
president's going to back whatever the hell MacArthur decides.
There's a lot of variables at play as to why MacArthur makes dumb choices. Are they just out of stupidity? Or is there something else going on? That's kind of what I'm getting at. So there's a lot to be played here.
Okay.
So MacArthur, it looks like there's going to be a war going on. This is just before Pearl Harbor. He gets recalled back into the military because he just happens to be the guy in the Philippines. He's in charge of the Philippines. So he's there to try and get some intermingling with the American Army and the Filipinos to try and, strengthen things. Now, another very famous person, General Henry Arnold, he proposes reinforcing the Philippine Army with aircraft. So he wants heavy bombers.
He was commander of the U.S. Army Air Force, right?
Yeah, Hap Arnold. So he wants a bunch of, B-17s to be in the Philippines. Actually, a large number of them, by the way. So he wants about 35 of them, and he wants some Tomahawk fighter escorts and stuff. Now, moving such resources to the Philippines is pretty controversial at this time, because it's not, I guess you would say, a priority, given Nazi Germany is...
And at this point, in July 1941, it is a Europe-first strategy.
Yes. And the United States is not in the war, by the way, yet. But, Nazi Germany has taken over France. It's kind of a priority. It's more on their radar. But MacArthur he's working to persuade the U.S. military to change the war plan a bit. And he's, making all these speeches. He's doing his little PowerPoints and all that kind of crap. And he's kind of come up with, bullshit. Well, he's lying. I'm just going to say, he's lying to the United States.
At this point, he tried to steal the Navy. He tried to steal the Navy from underneath the Navy. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say beg. He demanded that Nimitz' forces be, and he's commander-in-chief of the U.S. Navy and Pacific. He demanded that all naval vessels fall under his command.
Yes, he did this famously.
Because he's South Pacific commander-in-chief of U.S. armed forces, not just Army forces or Navy forces. He's the armed forces, and
But this is before even the war. This is before Nimitz is commander in chief, by the way. But he tells Washington that he will confidently.
Oh, fair. Yeah, I don't know why I was thinking like 42 in my.
That's okay. So he's doing a presentation. He's trying to like change the plans for the War Plan Orange, and he tells Washington, "I'm gonna have an army of 200,000 Filipinos ready to face the Japanese if they decide to invade." This is 100% bullshit. He has the men potentially, not the time, not the training, not the equipment, and the timetable he's giving them. It's maybe if he was given another year, he could have trained that amount.
Basically, a straight bluff.
Oh, it's a paper tiger, as we say. It's a whole paper tiger situation. And then, because of Hap Arnold saying he wants these B-17s over, MacArthur gets the clever idea of going, you know what? Give me these B-17s on this island, and I will preemptively attack Japan to neutralize their ass before they can even get their aircraft to hit us. Okay?
I know.
No.
No.
Knowing what happens,
no.
it's like...
Ian knows where this is going, but just for Justin...
I have no idea where this is going, but I have a feeling... And it's not a good one.
But basically, what you have to understand is, on paper, it's a great plan because these heavy bombers, which are some of the best in the world right now, they could neutralize what we call Taiwan today. It's Formosa back then. So the Japanese have an air force. Their heavy bombers are on this island. It's the closest one to the Philippines. And technically, if your bombers get over there first, you win. So if he has these bombers and he hits this place before the Japanese hit him, he basically knocks out their air power. You're probably going to save yourself a lot of time.
They're like aircraft carriers.
First of all, if he gets there first,
great swords,
but
terrible
if not,
whoever
then
strikes
he's just
first
poke
wins.
the bear when he has a military force that's not ready to go and is way smaller than he's claiming.
This all, of course, does not mesh with the current War Plan Orange. But Washington is sympathetic to some of the things that he's saying. They don't, and this is important, they do not change the war plan at all. What they tell him is basically he can do some limited things that he's saying, but not to accost the current war plan. That's what's important. So whatever he does, he needs to fall back on this war plan properly. And this is what's going to come up in the future. That's what he's going to really fuck up. So, things happen, like Pearl Harbor. And Washington, they were inspired by everything that he had said, and they had delivered. And because Japan was looking like it was threatening, so prior to Pearl Harbor, they're going to boost up the Philippines because they want to have at least some forces there. MacArthur's going to have 30,000 United States forces. He's got 130,000 Filipinos, but they're basically green, undertrained guys.
They're not ready.
Ill-equipped. I mean, legendarily, they're given rifles that don't work, and there's all sorts of crap going on with that. He's got a formidable force of B-17s. He doesn't have all the ones that he was supposed to get because, tragically, Japan, when they attack, it's during the transport of these B-17s. So he's missing a lot of them, which sucks for him.
And coinciding with the raid on Pearl Harbor.
Yes.
The Japanese Blitzkrieg, they hit everywhere at once.
Oh, yeah, it's a supernova in the east.
I don't want to spoil it for Justin.
But silly question, actually. Is Pearl Harbor one of the reasons why MacArthur didn't get as much of the resources he was supposed to get? Because they kept more on the mainland, expecting another attack?
Pearl Harbor is kind of like a big stop to anything getting to the Philippines because there's no way to get things to the Philippines after Pearl Harbor. Unless it's by submarine, mind you.
The Philippines gets hit at the same time as Pearl Harbor,
it's
along
simultaneous.
with a lot of British airfields. And basically, the Japanese were very intelligent about it. When they did their sneaky strike, they hit everyone at once, and they hit everyone's most, critical.
They aimed for the vital organs.
Airfields. Airfields are the first thing
that was the thing that they went. They went for everyone's airfields, and so when you got the U.S. stacking the Philippines with these B-17s.
And this is where.
No, but that was just my thought because if you're. Defending the motherland, but you figure, okay, U.S. soil is never going to be hit, so we can send all this shit to Philippines or whatever to help it. And all of a sudden, Pearl Harbor gets hit, and you go, ooh, we might need to defend.
I mean, I don't want to get into it, but politically, if you were to put a bunch of units in an island really close to Japan, it threatens Japan, so they have to do it discreetly too. So there's an element of that to it. But,
Okay.
But
Anyway.
they're
Kind of like the missile crisis. It's like
it's
Russia,
exactly like that. Yeah.
Russia putting the Soviet Union putting their nukes in Cuba, but I mean, the states that put their nukes in Turkey, which was closer to Moscow than Cuba is to DC.
So Pearl Harbor is now going to happen. It's a side note. As far as naval assets are concerned, there's like a submarine fleet beside the Philippines and a few other surface vessels, but it's not really significant. I mean, MacArthur's going to tell people that he has all confidence that the submarines will take out anything that the Japanese throw at them.
Sure.
Does not work out that way though. So you have again to go back because it's going to be like kind of like anal with this. War Plan Orange 3 is not fight them at the beaches and hope you never stop them. It's not to
Tuck and run.
Tuck and run right away. MacArthur's plan: fight them at the beaches and thwart any possible like invasion, like just to win the battle. It's basically now in order to have men at these areas in the beaches, the supplies need to be there too because that's where they're fighting. Yep. The supplies still, if they're not already in Bataan, need to be transportable.
Yep.
They're not going to be transportable because the Philippines is a bunch of islands, and he's actually placed units even on places that aren't the main island to defend all these other little islands for basically just to please the president of the Philippines, basically. So he wasn't supposed to have many units outside of Luzon. Luzon is the main island, and on top of that, on Luzon, he's basically put a bunch of his units at the forefront near the beaches. It's hilariously not what he's supposed to do.
So he spread himself in between all the little islands instead
Very
of protecting the main one.
Exactly.
Oh boy. Okay.
And he's under the belief the Japanese are not going to attack when they do because of harvest time and weather conditions and stuff. And there's some merit to that belief, but shit, it didn't work out. So in late November, there's a lot of warning signs that the Japanese are going to do something. MacArthur is warned by General Marshall, be on your toes. It seems like there's going to be hostilities that are going to break out.
Late November, the Japanese carrier fleet disappeared. Nobody knew where it was.
And they initiate Rainbow Plan 5. Don't need to really know about this, but basically it just puts him on war alert. So he's supposed to be on full war alert at this point.
A good comparison would be like if we were watching like the Soviet Union and we see all their nuclear missile submarines are in harbor, and we see them, and then the next day they're all gone.
Yeah,
and no idea where they are. That's what's going on in the world at this point when the Japanese carrier fleet disappears.
Yeah, so this is DEFCON 5.
Yeah.
Something's probably coming.
They didn't know. Like in hindsight, we know they're on their way to strike Pearl Harbor.
Well, you don't know they're coming for you, but you know they're going somewhere, which...
This is when you're like, okay, something's up. This is a major operation.
So now, for people who've seen the episode on the YouTube channel for Kings and Generals or the associated podcasts, I wrote both and I narrated the podcast. We're coming to the fine points of what happens. What are MacArthur's big fuck-ups, for lack of better words?
Psst. Hey you ever hear me talk about some great Pacific War movie or documentary like Pearl Harbor Minute by Minute over on Netflix and feel the urge to watch it for yourself? Uh-oh, you live in Japan and your Netflix doesn't have it? Must suck to be you.
Sucks to be me right now.
Oh wow, Season 4 of Demon Slayer is out. Oh wait, I can't watch it on Canadian Netflix, but it's over on Japan Netflix? Whatever will I do?
Oh no.
Being blocked from regional content? With private internet access, you too can watch Demon Slayer Season 4 by switching your IP address to Japan.
Yes! Hell yeah!
Why stop with Japan? With private internet access, you can change your IP address to over 84 different countries and every single US state, giving you access to region-restricted content all over the world.
Nice.
Many websites and services like Netflix are only accessible depending on your physical location, but private internet access helps you overcome these restrictions. Think about it. Without private internet access, it's like paying for a TV series and missing out on the latest season. Shots fired, Demon Slayer on Canadian Netflix.
Is that like a personal attack or something?
Ever fear people are gonna find your Google searches?
Banzai! Banzai! Banzai!
FBI, open up!
Private Internet Access makes sure that those Google searches remain a buried secret, as Private Internet Access encrypts your internet access and has a no-logs policy. Think you're safe with the local coffee shop's free Wi-Fi? No, you are certainly not. Private Internet Access gives you more privacy features than any other software and real-time protection from malware and trackers, giving you peace of mind knowing those Google searches remain seen by you and you alone. Private Internet Access has a no-log policy that they've defended in court, which means they are not storing any of your browsing data. Hey, are you like me using different devices under one household? Private Internet Access is available on all platforms and protects an unlimited amount of devices at the same time. I personally use Private Internet Access to unblock movies and TV series from all across the globe, and I sleep easier writing scripts for my YouTube channel and others knowing my data is secure. Look, this is a no-brainer. Sign up with my link in the description of this video to get 83% off, plus 4 months for free, so it ends up being only around $2 per month. Signing up for Private Internet Access is risk-free. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, and 24/7 customer support is available. So don't forget to click www.piavpn.com/The Pacific War Channel, and a big thanks to Private Internet Access for sponsoring this video.
Once Pearl Harbor has occurred, actually just before it's occurred, Thailand is being invaded first technically, Marshall tells MacArthur, initiate Rainbow Plan 5. Now MacArthur had, like I said, squabbled about, hey, I'm going to have these bombers and then I'll go and I'll hit Formosa and I'll knock out their ability to hit us. Yeah. This all politically has to be done after Japan has hit America first. So there's kind of this agreement, I guess you would say. Japan has to do the first blow and then this will be initiated. Pearl Harbor would seem to be a pretty good indicator of the first blow.
Yep.
Okay. So within minutes, Japan attacks Pearl Harbor, and MacArthur receives the report that Pearl Harbor's been attacked. He's informed at 3 a.m. His commander of the Air Forces, Brereton, gets this news like an hour after him. And Brereton, this is famous. He starts trying to get into the office of MacArthur to say, hey, we need to go and hit the Japanese before they hit us. Yeah. We are at war. Can't talk to him. He's locked up. He's locked in his room, and his chief of staff, a guy called Richard Sutherland, who's a little bitch in my opinion, he stops anybody from talking to MacArthur. Yeah, MacArthur's actually a good name for him though. So Brereton's going to do this thing where he just continuously keeps coming back, and he's freaking out. He's like, I'm in control of the Air Forces here. He has like planes circling on the airfields, and he's like, what the hell's going on? I need to speak to MacArthur. He asks, can you send a message to MacArthur, since he's so busy, can I bomb Formosa? That is their mission. MacArthur had actually, this was his plan in the first place.
Even just having your bombers in the air at the time.
So Brereton asks, and Sutherland just responds, no, you can't bomb Formosa, you need to do a photo recon first. Very questionable, okay? So he demands, he's like, no, you have to do this photo reconnaissance, blah, blah, blah. So Brereton is going to prepare a pilot to go do this. By 5:30 a.m., MacArthur receives another cable warning from Washington instructing him again initiate War Plan 5, or Rainbow 5. And he seemingly does nothing. If you read a lot of older books about the Pacific War, they actually don't have an explanation for what's going on. There's a lot more new information as to what's going on, but I'm just going to keep going through the motions of the time span. So you have to, every minute counts, right? That was at 5:30. 6:15, MacArthur's informed by Admiral Hart. So this is the admiral in the Philippines. So he's the Navy guy with him. And he says, the Japanese have literally bombed like a seaplane tender in the Philippines. So the Japanese have technically attacked people in the Philippines. Well, the United States Navy, for that matter.
Which also means they're here.
Yeah.
Wake up.
At 7:15. This is an hour after that. Brereton asks permission again to bomb Formosa. And Sutherland responds, quote, MacArthur said, no, we must not make the first overt act. Your role is defensive for the time being. You look confused, as anybody would be, because...
It was his own fucking plan.
It's his own plan, but they have been attacked. Not only has Pearl Harbor been attacked.
The Philippines.
At this
what, does
state,
he need a Japanese general to come punch him directly in the face?
Everyone is still in a state of shock, but when, like, you need your highest commanders to be able to look above that, to be above the shock.
Because
That's why they're in that position, to be able to react in those stressful times.
So
he's not reacting.
This is for most of the textbooks, the older ones, not the new ones. Like Ian Toll, for example, his new trilogy. He does a decent job explaining this. 8 o'clock, General Arnold, he calls Brereton from Washington. So he's talking to Brereton, not even MacArthur, warning him, do not let your planes be on the ground right now. Get them up in the air.
That's what I'm saying. Like, even if you're not going anywhere, get them up in the air.
Yeah. So, and Brereton has been kind of doing that. So he's ordering aircraft to circle the airfields, which is unfortunate for all other reasons, by 8:30 a.m. At 9:25 a.m., Brereton, he's informed that the Japanese bombers are attacking an airfield kind of up in the north. It's not the big airfield in the Philippines, but it's another smaller one. He telephones Sutherland. He asks permission again to bomb Formosa. Sutherland refuses. 9:40 a.m. This started at 2 a.m., by the way. The attack of Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, this is 6-7 hours later.
Brereton receives instructions to do the photo reconnaissance over Formosa. This is apparently from MacArthur.
This is just the photo reconnaissance.
Yeah. And if they see that it looks like the Japanese are preparing to hit them, it's kind of ironic to say,
They're already in the air.
Then he's approved to bomb them in the afternoon. At 10:14 a.m., MacArthur finally approves a bombing attack on Formosa. At 10:30, aircraft begin landing to refuel because they've been circling this airfield. 10:45, they are ordered to, bomb Formosa, scheduled for 2 p.m. if they were to make it by this point. And at 12:35, the Japanese completely destroy every goddamn aircraft almost. It is...
They were already there.
Kind of like a Pearl Harbor for the Philippines. All grounded. I think 2 fighters get up to even fight it. It is a absolute tragedy. It's at Clark Field Air Base. And it's called the Clark Field disaster. Now, you might be asking yourselves, okay, the situation looks like we have a commander, MacArthur. He just doesn't seem to be doing anything. Mm-hmm. Why? There is a reason. Again, the president of the Philippines is a personal best friend to his father and to him. This is alleged information. I'll say that with quotes. I'm not going to say this is fact. But it seems that the president was basically twisting his arm to not do anything, because the president had been invited to some propaganda campaigns in Japan where they said how great it'll be for the Philippines to join the common sphere, the co-prosperity sphere. So the Japanese assured the president that they were not going to invade the Philippines. They're going to liberate them from the dastardly Americans. So this poor president, who probably believed this, all alleged information, I'm not saying it's 100% factual, he was led to believe maybe the Japanese would attack the Americans, but they wouldn't invade the Philippines. So MacArthur, who was working as the general, that's my email for my other work. He's working as a general for the United States Army. He's also kind of the general of the Filipino Army. So there's conflict of interest there. So he was basically under the belief that he could not risk the Philippines being invaded by doing a preemptive strike, even though he was under orders to do so by his own plans too.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate to that argument, and maybe you have something about this later on, but okay, so Japan goes to the president of the Philippines and basically says, we're going to kick the Americans out and we're going to take care of you and it's going to be so much better and whatever. Here's a big piece of candy, you want it. Mm-hmm. But General MacArthur is the Americans. So why would he sit there and do nothing on a plan that basically guarantees his own demise?
He probably
just to try and help the country of a friend against the sworn enemy of the United States? That doesn't seem to hold a lot of ground.
There is another story. The day before the Japanese attack, MacArthur had an extravagant party where he probably got drunk with everybody, all the high-ranking officials, including Brereton and the pilots. They were all pretty hungover at his house. People have said perhaps he was too hungover to make decisions, but we're talking about a span of almost 10 hours. It doesn't work. It seems that
I don't care how hungover you are. When war starts, you kind of sharpen up a little bit.
And there were investigations by historians after, And, they're looking into this. He has a 40-year relationship with the President Quezon, like I said. And here, just to give more concrete information, Quezon was in Tokyo in 1938, and that's where the Japanese officials told him Japan has no aggressive intentions towards the Philippines, and they only want trade, blah, blah, blah.
They want no checks.
Greater co-prosperity sphere, it's pure bullshit. And Quezon, on Quezon's part, he wants to avoid thousands of Filipino deaths because he does not want his country invaded. Obviously, from
Fair
his
point. I understand it from his point of view. I don't understand that argument from MacArthur's point of view.
Yeah. So this is the thing. MacArthur stressed this idea he would get these B-17s and then he would strike Formosa, which is a Japanese colony.
Which he froze and never did.
It's one of their most major airfields at this time. Like, actually, it remains one of the most formidable airfields for years to come. Like, the damage that comes out of that airfield.
So if you're Quezon, Pearl Harbor's been attacked, Malaya, Thailand's been attacked. They're going to be attacked in a few hours, but from his knowledge, they haven't been. If the United States launches bombers from the Philippines, his country, and they attack Japanese soil...
It seems like a direct attack from the Philippines to Japan.
You're inviting death. So it is more than likely Quezon had begged MacArthur and bribed him. I'm going to say that up front. There is money transactions that will be involved, and that is factual. Begged him not to preemptively strike. And that's all fine and dandy. You can argue, okay, they attacked...
At this point, it's not a preemptive strike anymore.
Yeah, you can argue, okay, they attacked Pearl Harbor. They haven't attacked the Philippines yet. Unfortunately, that isn't a cold hard fact. They attacked a sea... I had mentioned, in one of the southern islands, it's actually called Mindanao, the Japanese were caught attacking some naval vessels that were American. So, from that point, and MacArthur was given a report of this, you've been attacked in the Philippines. Yeah, it's time to go. But he did not. To this day, no one can say for sure because it's not like MacArthur's going to write that down as to why he was locked up in that room for so long and his little butt boy Sutherland held the guys at the door. But
I really don't like this guy.
I don't like Sutherland. Anyways. So the Japanese... Okay.
Which is fair.
We're going to fast forward a bit because this is going to be a long podcast. So now, the Japanese are going to invade the Philippines. It's going to be Lieutenant General Homa, and he's bringing the 14th Japanese Army. And they're going to be landing first in the north, which is a small little island called Bataan, which is kind of funny. It's not to be mistaken with Bataan. And they are going to launch an invasion of the northern coast of Luzon 2 days later. So that's going to be on December the 12th. Now, I'm not going to talk about all the other islands. There's other small islands that can get invaded and stuff, but that's kind of, for lack of better words, that doesn't mean anything. But basically... War Plan Orange 3, the current war plan, should be implemented immediately. You are at war with Japan, and especially now that they're invading, you initiate it, you should be doing...
You should be running for the safe spot, hunkering down, and...
A symbolic defense at the beach, cavalry, whatever you want, like a small little thing. But your men and your supplies need to get to Bataan. So you're doing delaying actions to get everyone to Bataan, and then you're hunkering down. We're going to call, like, Bataan's like a castle that you're hunkering down in. He does not do this at this point. Instead, he initiates his plan, which was to fight the beaches. So this is the first blunder, allowing the Air Force to get hit the way it did. This is his second big blunder in the Philippines. Now, he's talking with the Admiral Hart again, and he's like, what can you do? And Admiral Hart's like, I'll try and shoot this stuff, the submarines. The United States doesn't know this, but basically their torpedoes are all duds.
Oh.
Yeah, they have a huge problem.
95% of torpedoes at the time don't work.
So they're not shooting down many boats. We'll say that much. Admiral Hart has given orders from the United States Navy just to get the F out of there. So all the surface ships are they're gone. They're going. Only the submarines stay, and I mean the submarines aren't going to do like.
So this ain't going well.
Yeah. So after no results from the submarines, a little comedic quote, MacArthur to Admiral Hart: "What in the world is the matter with your submarines?" Like I said, they didn't realize that the Mark 14 torpedoes were just duds. They don't fix that till late 43.
Yeah, it takes years.
Yeah, it's that's another story I can do as a podcast. That'd be a fun one. Yeah, why
the Japanese have the best torpedoes in the world at this point?
The United States Navy did not acknowledge that they had a problem with their torpedoes because they didn't want to admit failure, and it just led to almost 2 solid years.
Yeah,
which is terrible.
It's a whole thing because the War Department was aware that the torpedoes didn't work.
Yeah, they were completely aware.
But they refused to call like a recall on it.
They wouldn't let researchers research it either. Yeah. So just on top of everything, I like to nitpick. So MacArthur has this really stupid plan to send the men to the beaches. If you are going to stop an enemy from landing on your beaches, do you send your worst units or your best units?
Your best, I guess.
Because you're trying to make a stand, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't do that. So he doesn't send his crack troops. He actually sends kind of like, I'm not going to be mean, but kind of like the Greens, the Filipino guys who haven't they don't have the training. And he just tells them you're going to hold it at all cost. He retains his crack troops in the reserve, and he kind of establishes layers of defense. We call it defense in depth.
Yeah.
Which he's supposed to be doing just a delaying action. Again, this doesn't make sense. And they're crushed at the beaches. They actually don't put up much of a fight because they just can't. It's they don't even have proper artillery to deal with the enemy. And homeless forces are rapidly advancing to the interior of the island. So Manila is the capital of the Philippines, of this big island. Yeah. So they're going to march onto the capital, as any army would do. The Japanese have knowledge of how the Americans will fight, and they understand what Bataan is, but you're going to take Manila first. It's going disastrously. I'm just going to fast forward a bit because I have a whole script in front of me that I wrote once upon a time about all the things go wrong, but we'd be here forever. And basically, weeks of fighting are happening. War Plan Orange 3 has not been officially implemented. So it's under his jurisdiction. So MacArthur is the general in charge. He is supposed to say, hey, War Plan Orange 3, we commence now.
Yeah.
Once he says that, the supplies, wherever they may be, because this idiot has placed them everywhere, they go to Bataan. So on December the 24th, they've been fighting for quite a while at this point. He initiates it, and now the Japanese are kind of almost running rampant in the southern part of the big island and on the northern part. There are pockets of guys and large formations that are, it's almost impossible for them to get over there. Miraculously, they do. It's an incredible miracle, and it goes to show the guys who defended the Filipinos Americans were badasses. They were dealt the worst hand of cards, and they did make them pay for it, and it took a long time for the Japanese to win in the Bataan, despite MacArthur.
The guerrillas that came out of the conflict are like...
But that's kind of what I was going to say. If they waited for Japanese to attack, and especially to control the harbor, how the fuck would they even get those supplies from other islands into Bataan?
Oh, the supplies on the other islands? Gone. Those are abandoned. The supplies on the main island, what they can grab, they gotta grab, and they are grabbing, and you're talking about hundreds of thousands of civilians running on roads with them. Because with the civilians are just gonna run where the army guys are because they're afraid. They're afraid.
Yeah.
It's a clusterfuck. Now, to simplify, MacArthur has obviously fallen back on the war plan far too late. Gesundheit. And it's unrealistic for it to actually be implemented. So the whole point of this war plan is they had estimated how many people would be in Bataan, how much supplies would be there. It gives them a rough idea. Can fight a 6-month war. Or siege, if you want to call it that. That's obviously not going to happen at this point. They're not going to have that many supplies, and they're going to have a shitload more people, because they're going to have civilians and a bunch of people running into Bataan at this point. So he only stockpiles enough, they're estimating, to survive like a 30-day siege. It's supposed to be 6 months.
Okay, ain't going well.
Yeah. So a lot of the men are going to suffer from the other unfortunate things like disease and starvation. And it's certainly going to play a lot into this. Now, there was a lot of variables that were out of control for MacArthur and all this, but of what he did control, you really have to think of it this way. It was him who had changed the plans at the last minute to afford this little, I'll have B-17s and I'll attack Formosa. Yet he didn't initiate it. It was his own plan. So they wasted resources there. All these planes get destroyed on the ground. He doesn't initiate the war plan that's been around for 40-something fucking years at this point. It's the fallback. Everybody knows what they're supposed to do. And when he does do it, it's far too late. So basically, if his intention was to thwart the overall conquest of the Philippines, of course that was going to fail. There's just no way to stop the Japanese. There's overwhelming numbers. There's nothing to save the Philippines. he had basically crippled the whole defense. And now I know Ian would know this, but do you know what happens to MacArthur when his boys are fighting this horrible battle in Bataan? He sails away to Australia. Because entire time...
He's the prize. He's the mastermind. He's the only chance of victory. Like, we will... Well, his famous quote of, I will be back.
From this perspective and with the narrative
why
you're painting...
Why a lot of, like, historians...
I'm painting him bad.
No, but it's fair. And why a lot of historians dislike MacArthur is a lot of American commanders were fired for less. Like, much less.
Of course, yes.
But him, he was invincible.
But you have to understand, we had talked about how he has kind of this entourage, public relations.
And from the portrait you're painting, he sounds like a boxer who was paid to take a dive.
Actually, I've never heard anyone call it that. That's actually exactly what it was. He was a boxer who was paid to take a dive, and he wouldn't do it. And he failed.
Well, he wouldn't do it. He obviously did. He took a fucking dive.
No, but I mean, he actually did not want the Philippines to be conquered. Because you have to understand, the rest of the war, the Philippines is
the population of Philippines love
MacArthur is God.
So when he did say those words like "I will be back," it did galvanize the spirit of the Philippines. That we are not forgotten, and they were not. No. Like, in truth, they were not. MacArthur sailed to Australia, but point being is, this is a lot of blunder in the defense. It could have been orchestrated so much.
Oh, I have a few more tidbits.
Yeah, I obviously. And well, just jumping ahead, like, he escapes to Australia, and at this point, he's untouchable by public opinion.
Yeah. So, what I was gonna say is this public relations team he has, which Sutherland is at the forefront. Again, his butt buddy. During all of this fighting in the Philippines, America has not won any battles. There's some stuff on Wake that's kind of nice, but they're getting crushed. The Japanese are invincible, destroying everywhere. They need some kind of gleaming morale. The American people need morale. Something good has to come out of this.
So they make him the shining.
They made him a rock star. Everything was about MacArthur and his boys in Bataan fighting. So they lifted him up to be a god. And then there was a situation where
he was put on a pedestal. Yeah. And what happens when you put a narcissist on a pedestal? Yeah. It feeds his already inflated ego. Yeah.
But worse that, what happens if that rock star gets captured by the Japanese?
Now they have the biggest bargaining chip.
Yeah. So,
which is like morale sinks.
And this gets even more complicated. MacArthur is going to be battling to be president of the United States against the current president, which is FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So they hate each other. Legendarily hate each other. FDR called him like public enemy number one. And FDR would probably have tried to assassinate him if he could. But basically, MacArthur becomes a godlike figure. And even FDR, who wants to see him gone, can't afford to allow him to be taken by the Japanese. So FDR is forced to order him to basically be rescued, to be tossed over to Australia. They can't allow the Japanese to have him. So you've inevitably made a situation where you can't acknowledge this guy's a complete fuck up. And they just continuously glorify him. And what does MacArthur do for the rest of the war? He uses it to get his own personal advantage. He pushes every agenda he can because he wants to become president of the United States, and he will try to run. But in the meantime, the United States, they're looking at, all these plans. They're going to go through the Central Pacific and do all this stuff.
He runs on the Democrat ticket, doesn't he?
Republican. Yeah, he had friends in the Republican Party.
Okay.
And funny little piece of history. He had Sutherland go to the United States to talk to his representative, the Speaker of the House of the Republican Party, to see, they did a poll to see who would vote for MacArthur if he were to run. And everybody was okay and they would vote for MacArthur, except for a single group of people who all voted not to elect him. Do you know who they were? They were
KKK.
Members of the army that served under him.
At the time, the KKK would be voting Democrats.
Yes,
the Democrats
at the time,
were the Southern Party.
That was before the Great Switch. Let's not talk about that on this podcast. We're not even Americans here, we're Canadians. We don't have to talk about that.
Yes, but 2024 is going to be a very entertaining year.
It's going to be.
And it's already starting.
It's going to be the most elections ever. Democracy's on the ticket.
It's going to be the best election ever.
I'll just say this, America. You gotta fight the chance of fascist dictatorship by just currently having a fascist dictatorship. So that's an ironic one.
Us as Canadians, we know all too well.
Canadians know about fascism. Yeah.
Yeah. We're currently shackled to one.
Yeah. Great. Well, my podcast is off the air.
There we go. Now it's
But
demonetized.
to finish off with MacArthur, because I have to talk about this. A lot of people don't know these little tidbits information. During his time in the Philippines, while the battle's going on, just before he escapes, everyone knows about a famous transaction. He was given $500,000 by the president, Kuzan. Now, you'd think that's illegal. Technically, generals were still allowed, because he was in a civilian capacity, to receive this money. It still looks really bad. Other people are offered money too by the president. They don't take it because you wouldn't. It's not moral, but he does. But something else happens. Just before Manila is taken by the Japanese, he secretly talks to an investor broker guy that he has, and he buys a bunch of stocks in some mining companies in the Philippines at the last minute. Drains his accounts, and then he escapes, and those mining companies afterwards are worth like millions of dollars. Just saying, people, if you really want to know about MacArthur, you got to follow the money trail, because that's where the real information is. And I could only say a little bit in the K&G video I wrote, because I didn't want to go down the rabbit hole, because there is some alleged information, but factually, there's reason to believe he was profiteering over the whole thing, and that he probably knew the Japanese would have taken over the island in the first place, and his bank account shows what he was actually thinking. Anyways,
so he let it sink, cashed in his chips, and thank you very much. Have a good night.
Well, he played his cards right. We'll say that much, and a lot of people never talk about that. But overall, MacArthur will make more blunders in World War II, but he's more famously regarded during the Korean War for bigger blunders. But the Philippines, the initial Philippines defense was a disaster, and I'd argue it's a lot of it's his fault. Other than that, he had a colorful career. He did some good, did some bad. And that was kind of a little story about MacArthur.
Well, he becomes a thorn, like at this point, this is where he becomes a thorn in the side for many.
Everybody else in the military.
It's just him in Australia.
Yeah.
I need this. And like, meanwhile, the States is, okay, well, first of all, we have a Europe first policy.
Yeah.
Is it? No, I need it. This is what starts to aggravate Eisenhower. Then the Pacific, the U.S. Pacific Fleet starts getting rebuilt, rearmed. No, I need it over here in Australia. Well, first of all, we can't even get it to... Yeah, like, we need to win the Central Pacific.
Yeah.
And...
Okay, they're fighting at the same time, but the Central Pacific was the good route to go, but he wanted to do a drive to the Philippines because he had said on his personal character, we shall return, and he wanted to run for the White House. So during World War II, he does press the Australians, the Americans under him, to do certain operations in this kind of, like, insane gambit to earn himself more glory, because he's vetting him. He's trying to win.
Even if they lose it, he's almost the hero that tried to take the Philippines back.
Well, when it comes down to it, like, you have MacArthur in Australia, and then you'd have Nimitz and like from Pearl Harbor, and Nimitz has his vision of how the war should go, his operations that he wants to
which
take
he's corrected,
and MacArthur has his. Now, to differ from popular current belief, the States has unlimited resources to
Back then
share.
it wasn't like
they
that.
did not. Like, things are just starting to come off the production line.
70% to Europe, 30% to the Pacific.
We can only do one operation at a time, guys. So decide. And Nimitz and his benefactor, superior Admiral King, it's like, no, we're gonna do this. And the entire time, nope, we got to do this, and it creates so much turmoil in Washington. It's like, who's in command of the Pacific? And like, on paper and in realism, it is Nimitz. Nimitz is supposed to be in command of the Pacific Fleet. But in MacArthur's mind, no, I'm supreme commander. Like,
it's true.
Everything falls under my leadership.
Yeah, but then I ask you this, because if you want to be devil's advocate for MacArthur, was Nimitz the leader of Japan after? MacArthur won. MacArthur won in the end. Everything. I mean, like, the drive to the Philippines, they did it. They shouldn't have. There's a lot of battles they shouldn't have done. Like, I'm sorry to the Filipinos, but...
In 44 and 45, there were a lot of operations. Unnecessary ones. But MacArthur did spearhead a lot of ambitious campaigns.
Yeah, but I don't want to get into
where
this.
Nimitz was a little bit more pragmatic and
He's a
conservative.
Navy, yeah. Well, yeah. But, like, they're trying to save lives.
Yeah,
but how
that
MacArthur...
was Nimitz's view. It's like, okay, we can get it done without the needless, like, slaughter.
But how could MacArthur be so gung-ho in 44 and 45 and yet stand completely passively when the Philippines are being taken?
There's two different. There's two different MacArthurs. So if there was a part 2 to this episode, I would talk about the New Guinea campaign. In the New Guinea campaign, which for the most part it goes accordingly. There's a very important aspect to it, which is against the place. There's Bunangona and Sanananda beside it, and MacArthur literally forces the men to go into a battle quicker than they should without being equipped, and there's an immense loss of life. And all the war planners, especially the Australian commanders, are like, we should have took our time and done this accordingly. And MacArthur would not hear of it because the entire time World War II is going on, there's a race between MacArthur and Nimitz, and whoever's achieving the most will get the initiative for where they go in the war. So if you're looking at a map, Nimitz is going through the central part of the Pacific. MacArthur has to go over New Guinea, and he's doing like this kind of western approach. And in MacArthur's head, the more he can achieve, the faster he can go, the more resources they will give to him so that he can continue the drive. And he sacrifices Australian, New Zealand, American lives to do this. And people won't like to hear that, but it's true. And you just have to look at the Bunagona campaign. That is the best evidence of him going out of bounds and forcing this. And especially when he's like stealing command. He's basically not even the commander of the Australian forces, and he steals command. It's a messed up story. But that's all for this episode today. Because Craig's, we're only 2 beers in, but we got to do another podcast after this one. And I don't want to be too drunk for that.
I was wondering, are we going to say on the next one, hey, for those watching, we didn't just film a back-to-back podcast. We just happened to be wearing the same things.
Yeah, we'll change seats. So
MacArthur, like, you go on, like, that's just like the brink of war. That's all we talk about, MacArthur. Yeah. And you had asked, like, I forget what the question was, but at the time, the States was... and I call it like pre-war states and during war states. They're two different entities, and MacArthur was a victim of the same thing. Like pre-war American command and during war command, like they're two different beings entirely. And you do see quite fast, in fact, the U.S. get their shit in gear, and like we were wrong.
Well, the thing about the United States that no one ever glorifies, but the change of command in the first year of the war, especially the Marines, shuffling, like just, even at the lower levels, the echelon.
And I said, like, commanders were fired for so much less, and just MacArthur was untouchable though.
Like, look at Spruance, Halsey, and all these kind of guys. It's like the aggressive. Well, they're not all aggressive, but the aggressive guys.
Well, Spruance and Halsey loved each other, but like the rotating command between the two.
But you have a commander like Fletcher.
Marine generals were fired like this, just a bad landing. They were let go, and it's like things entirely out of their control. Like landing on the beaches, and all of a sudden all your radios don't work, and you get fired for that.
But that is all for this podcast. For those who are listening in on the audio platforms like Spotify, please check out my YouTube channel. For the love of God, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. You can also catch me at the Pacific War Discord. And above all else, if you want to support the channel further, you can check out my Patreon account at www.patreon.com/the Pacific War Channel, where you can find exclusive podcasts where I talk about some, to be honest, a lot more fucked up shit. Like this month's podcast is probably going to be about Operation Fugu, which was Japan trying to create Israel in Shanghai. And you heard that right. It'll be an interesting one. go check it out. Thanks, guys, for being here.
Yeah,
Pleasure.
appreciate it.
Bye, guys.
Bye.